Computer.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Unite Show. I'm your host, Crystal One, and this is my partner, Shine Kelly. Together, we are Unite's co-founders. And if you don't know, Unite is our new social media health and wellness and emotional well-being platform that you can find at www.unite.love. We are coming to you every week with the Unite Show. Most weeks we're on Thursday nights at 6:15 Pacific Standard Time, but today we're doing a special edition on a Wednesday night. So very exciting. And every week we have different special guests. So this week we have the amazing Alan Steinfeld, and he is going to be talking with us about remote viewing and the awareness of the non-local mind. So very exciting stuff. If you are tuning in on one of our live channels and you want to come into the Zoom call and get to raise your hand, ask questions so we can see your beautiful face, please go to unite.love. It's free to sign up if you don't already have an account, and you can find us streaming live on the Love stream at the top of the page. So go there, and then we get to see you and we get to play together. And I think that's everything. That's my intro. So welcome to this week's episode of the Unite Show. And we're going to start with a little intro from Alan about what he's going to be sharing with us. Anytime if you're on the call or on any of our lives and you want to just raise your hand or pop a little question in, and we will get those answered for you, and we'll get to dig in on this exciting topic. So welcome, Alan, and take it away.
Thank you both. It's great to be back on the show. It was a really great show we did last time. Hopefully this one will be just as good, almost as good. But I talked last time about my book, Making Contact, this presence of this non-human intelligence. And that was one of my passions. What's going on here? What is the government hiding? What kind of experiences are people having? What is contact real? I have to say it is real. Just because it's outside the framework of what our traditional paradigm is, doesn't mean it's not real. If you're having an experience, don't doubt your experience. It is your reality, and we're only here to learn from our experience, not what other people say about our experience. I mean, it's great to have comments. So, but more and more contact is happening worldwide. And this combined with my other passion that, which was remote viewing. Now, what is remote viewing? I'll give you a little history. Do you know anything about it, you guys? Shine?
Yeah, I've heard the overview from from all the way back from military stuff to people who've done it. So I have an idea.
So a little history, though, as far as I know. The CIA found out that the Russians, this is in the late 60s and early 70s, had a psychic spying program. And they said, we can't let the Russians outdo us. And whether or not they believed in it, they hired people at the Stanford Research Institute to start a parallel program. And this was founded by Hal Puthoff, who's still working with the CIA, and is actually very involved in the UFO disclosure movement on the government side, and Russell Targ, both scientists. Both Hal and Russell were laser scientists. They got together. Hal had the connection to the Stanford Research Institute, and Russell had some connections for funding, but they were both very much interested in what was called psychic phenomena. But they knew. What's that?
Is that the Man Who Stared at Goats movie?
Yes. The Man Who Stared at Goats was a takeoff on what they were trying to do at the Stanford Research Institute. Said the mind is very powerful. It could actually kill a goat. Well, I think you have to be a really advanced yogi in order to do that. But yeah, that was a kind of satire on what was happening at Stanford Research Institute. But they needed someone to really formulate the program. And Hal Puthoff knew this guy named Ingo Swann, who's a very famous psychic in New York. They actually met in the early Scientology days. Now they're very disassociated from Scientology because that was with the L. Ron Hubbard beginnings. And then it's just, I mean, they're strange. I'm not to offend any Scientologists that are out there, but it's an odd thing. But in the beginning, perhaps, I think it had some really solid new material for people to understand a greater psychology. Anyway, Hal Puthoff had met Ingo Swann there. Ingo Swann was known as a great psychic. He brought Ingo out to the Stanford Research Institute. He said, okay, what are we going to do to develop a psychic program? And Hal said something like, this might not be the exact thing, that, okay, can you tell me what you're seeing in the basement of this building that they're in? So Ingo just extended his psychic ability, and he said he saw this meter, and he actually, while he was looking at the meter, he was affecting the meter by just remote viewing it. It's like one of the concepts of quantum physics is when you look at something, you affect it. There is no objective viewing of reality. Everything you look at has influence. Thoughts are things. He sees this meter in the basement. Hal says, what are you doing? And Ingo says, I'm remote viewing. And that was a much better term for the CIA and Stanford than psychic spying. That was a little hokey. So that kind of way it's got stuck. And I knew Ingo. I know Hal, and I know Russell. And Ingo was quite a genius. He was a really developed psychic. He developed protocols for developing what I call right brain awareness. So I use the example when I teach remote viewing, and I'm teaching it for 8 weeks coming up in June with lightnet.org. Go to lightnet.org. There's another 8-week class where I combine remote viewing with making contact. I'll get into that. But the way I understand it is, so you have your computer, right? And if you didn't know there was an internet, you would think all the information that you can have on your computer, someone programmed on your computer. Now, if someone comes along and says to you, I got information that's not on my computer, you would think they're crazy unless you knew about the internet. So the internet is how we get information that's not inputted into your computer by software and hardware. So we have that. Our right brain is connected to some people, they call it the subconscious mind. I think it's actually much more than the subconscious mind. I think our right brain is connected to the infinite nature of reality. And our left brain, which we're really taught to think is the only thing that really matters. You know, Einstein said sort of like this, your left brain will get you from A to B, but your right brain will get you everywhere else. So the right brain is the intuitive, it's the creative, it looks at patterns, you know. The left brain looks at things, objects, nouns, but the right brain, it's like, do you see the forest or you see the trees? The trees are left brain, I see trees. The forest is the pattern of trees. So the idea is to be whole brain, but the left brain is so overdeveloped in our culture that, you know, when we're 5 or 6 years old, we learn to read and write and count 1, 2, 3. So the world becomes removed from our immediate connection to it because we've overlaid what Joseph Chilton Pearce called a semantic reality on top of it. So things no longer are things, they're words. So if you do see a tree, you just call it a tree and move on. But if you didn't call something a tree or a piece of grass or whatever, it would be this living being in front of you. That's right brain consciousness. This is what the indigenous people, the Native Americans, the Australian Aborigines, they were more right brain. They were more intuitive. They were more in touch with the land. They were more in touch with their feelings. The left brain is thought, the right brain is feelings. We've forgotten how to feel. We've developed this other capacity, which is just the local consciousness. It's just like what you put on your computer. So how would you ever be able to explain a non-local consciousness if all you think you are is localized consciousness? So remote viewing came along, and I interviewed Hal Puthoff about it, and he's a scientist, and he said, oh, the CIA wanted us to remote view these bases in Russia and these underground things and these missiles. And Hal would say, he said to me in my interview, every day I'd go into the office and say, this is impossible. How can anyone see beyond their local reality? And at the end of every day, he was totally shocked that people can do that. And when I started teaching this, I was shocked. People right off the street, and we're going to do an experiment here, okay? I'm going to have you remote view something. But so there's no way to really explain how this works. So if I say, a friend of mine is at a location, can you tune into this guy, my brother Jeff, and know where he is? You just get empty. You empty up the personality. The personality cannot exist in the non-local awareness, because all you do then is project what you know onto the target. When you're remote viewing, they have these things called targets. I call it target practice. So if I had an envelope here and was looking at a picture, and we can also do that, I would just say, get empty. Really, you have to get empty, no thoughts, and just put your intention on what I'm looking at. We could do experiments like that too. And that's what I do in my class. And 90% of the people, and I can't explain how they do it, are able to get the target. They're able to do that. Maybe I should do a little experiment with you on how I learned to remote viewing. It's recorded on video with Russell Targ. Would you like that, Shine?
Sure.
It's on. Let me see if I could share my screen here. Oh yeah, I can share my screen. Yeah. So Russell, well, why don't we go where's your partner, Shine? I don't want
She's coming back. She just went to the washroom.
Okay, I'll wait for her. But basically, there's no way to explain this intuitive awareness except for the fact that we know everything about anything all the time. Like the name of that Oscar-winning movie. What is it called? Everywhere, All at Once?
Yeah.
That's what we are. That's a very, I mean, I didn't see the movie, but I just love the title. We're everywhere, all the time, all at once, whatever that was.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
That's exactly my theory of remote viewing. See, people who are really formal say it's your subconscious. Well, I say if your subconscious, it still only knows what it was exposed to, maybe not consciously exposed to, but how do you explain tuning into a target that is not anything you could ever know about? And so there's other ways of explaining that, and I call it, and I don't know anyone else is calling that, but I call it the imaginal realm.
I love it.
The imaginal. Have you heard that term, Kesa? So the imaginal is different than the imaginary. So when we are remote viewing, I sort of hint at using your imagination, but it's not, see, we need much more sophisticated words than imagination. Imagination means you're creating, you're making it up. Imaginal means this is a real place that exists sort of in an infinite space. It exists beyond time and space. It exists forever and always, and we can tune into the past, present, and future, here, now, or on other planets. So in this class that I'm doing for LightNet, lightnet.org, lightnet.org, we're going off planet. So we get trained for 4 weeks. I train them. I say, okay, guys, let's see how good you're doing in the basic remote viewing, just getting simple targets that I know what the answer is. I know what those targets are. And then when we get enough of a consensus, I say, okay, we're going off planet, because, and there's no way to check if these other civilizations that we're really tuning into, if they're right or wrong. But I say, if we get a consensus on the things that we know are the targets, and then we go off planet, we visit the Pleiadians, Sirius, other kind of popular star systems, and everyone gets the same aliens there with the same message. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but I'm saying it's very probable that remote viewing is real. It's not contained in this time-space continuum. We can go anywhere. And it seems to be the story about what happens in these remote viewing classes. People get similar beings with similar messages and I say, what does the planet look like? What does the sun look like? What do these beings look like? And, so it gets very exciting. We become cosmic anthropologists exploring, going where no one has gone before. And it's like, you know what? I just heard on a video Richard Dolan did. This is exactly where the remote viewing went with the CIA. The only way they could really make sense of the technology of the UFOs and who were on it is having remote viewers at their disposal to see who these beings were in these craft and what they were here for, and tuning into them. There's one of the best remote viewers of all time, Paul Smith. Paul,
Wow.
I've been meaning to get in touch with you. I want to interview you, Paul.
Okay. I have to confess, I had a hard time getting in, and I can't stay very long, but I thought I'd check it out at your invitation. You must be Shine.
I'm Shine. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Well, I've been saying, Paul, I've been teaching remote viewing based on what I learned from Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, but it's not quite what CRV is. It's more like this immediate flash of what these targets are. And I find that 90% of the people really have this instant awareness. And I'm trying to make sense of how that's possible. And I think you call it the subconscious from what I've read, but how do you make sense of what people are really doing?
Well, so first off, the Swan, Targ, Puthoff, and of course all the folks that were part of that effort, and there's a lot of them, and a lot of them don't get credit for it because they just don't speak up, but they pretty much established that everybody can do it. Now, everybody is in quotes, because there's probably folks here and there who can't, but it's not because they don't have the abilities, because they're not able to operationalize it in some way. For example, it's possible maybe autistic people can't. I don't know. That's something we need to test, but you can think about it. There might be some disabilities that make it not possible, but generally speaking, everybody can do it. And what you're referring to is something I call, well, Ingo Swan sort of called it spontaneous remote viewing, right? Because you were doing essentially remote viewing, but it was just sort of off the cuff, out of the blue, which people have been doing ESP in general like that for millennia, probably. Well, I don't know how long humans been around, however long humans have been around. And so that's something that we're all blessed with. I tend to call the follow-on further development of that generic remote viewing, or some people call it free-form remote viewing, which is where through trial and error, you get to where you can do it consistently and reasonably accurately. And so, yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
What I'm trying to understand, and I don't know if there's really an answer, is how actually what is the non-local mind? How is that actually created? Where does that come from? Do you have an answer?
Well, I have an answer, but it's necessary, but not sufficient. Okay. So non-local mind, I think that there's an aspect of us that is non-physical, right? Now, of course, that flies in the face of most. I got a PhD in philosophy, and most of the philosophers I know are pretty much physicalists, and the same with, of course, most scientists, or at least a large percentage of them. They would reject that idea. I think they're non-physical, but by the very nature of it being non-physical, here we are in a physical existence. It makes it very hard to comprehend that. And so that's why I say it's necessary but not sufficient. It's non-physical, but it's not a sufficient explanation as to what it is exactly, because, at least from our conscious world perspective, we don't know.
Well, I say you're onto something there, because I think there's not just an aspect of us that's non-physical. I think the very essence of who we are is non-physical. And we are just, that's how you explain near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, a part of consciousness that is not necessarily connected to the brain or the mind, whatever you want to call it. And so essentially, I think the consciousness existed before physicality, and we are using these vehicles as, to have experience in the 3D world, but who we really are is a forever essence. and that forever essence, in my understanding, is connected to all time and all space.
Yeah.
So I'd say just a couple of different, it's not different. I think we're probably talking the same thing, but I'd say, first of all, that it is connected to our brains and our bodies, but it's not dependent on our brains and bodies, right? Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is, at least in my metaphysical world, which is somewhat dependent on Mormon theology, that both the physical and the non-physical have existed forever. I don't think either one of them has a beginning. And they've always interacted, but neither is dependent on the other. It's like two self-sufficient domains that in a weird sort of way cooperate. At least that's one way I think of it.
You know, the old question is, I'm so happy I have a chance to talk to Paul here, Shine. So thank you very much, because I've really been thinking about you. I asked my friend Marianne about you and all that. And we're both going to be at Context in the Desert.
Oh, you're connected with Marianne. Okay, all right. Yeah.
I love that this happened. Have you guys, Alan, you know Bashar, of course.
Yeah.
And what you're saying reminds me of how he explains how space travel works for their civilization, where time and space actually has a frequency, and that an object's location in time and space changes the frequency of that object. And so this water bottle here has a slightly different frequency than this water bottle here. And that's how they get their spacecraft to move, is they overwhelm the vibration of the water bottle or of their spaceship to be, instead of in this location, in this location, and it moves there. And it's kind of like how channeling works, where you're getting.
Yeah, no, I get what I think. It's also how we tune into different things by duplicating a frequency. I think this is an incredible, the brain itself, Paul, is this incredible, most sophisticated mechanism probably ever created. And we're able to match frequencies of locales or situations. I mean, we can remote view events. So I explain it, Paul, this way. It's like what I call the imaginal realm. Have you heard about the term imaginal?
The term is familiar. I'm not sure the context where I heard it in, but yeah.
Imaginal, it's not really a physical space, but it's an existence of a realm that it's not mental, but it's not physical, but it exists in some other level, maybe in the Platonic form of ideal sort of objects that don't exist here or something. But the imaginal, it's actually from the Sufi term. There's a guy named Henri Corbin. You know his work, Henri Corbin?
No, not by name.
Anyway, he's talked about it. We call it imaginary, then it's just fantasy. It's just it's not fantasy. When we're remote viewing, when you're remote viewing, you're using right, and maybe you could describe it better because you're one of the best in the world. You're using a part of the mind that appears to be sort of imaginary, but it's not. How do you, and I'm trying to figure out how do you, I mean, because it's coming to you, the images are coming in, and someone who wasn't proficient would think they were making it up, but you, and in the remote viewers I know, and the remote viewing I've done, it's actually coming from another realm. How would you explain that, Paul?
Well, let me just say this about it sparks sort of a little sidebar that's one of the beauties of remote viewing, is that someone who is not, maybe a critic or a skeptic about it would say you're just making this stuff up. But that's the beauty of remote viewing, is when you're remote viewing real targets, you have corroborative evidence that proves that you really did perceive something that should have been impossible for you to perceive, right?
Yeah.
So where does that come from? Of course, that's a big question. And I'll tell you what, I don't know exactly. And this has to do with that non-physical thing. I think that there are ways that we perceive. I mean, there's lots of theories, and I know pretty much all theories. One is that it's alternate, parallel universes, to use the vernacular. Oops, sorry about that. That's my text alert. I better make it quiet. I forgot this.
Was it your horse, Paul?
That reminds me, that is meant to remind me why I'm not milking cows anymore. So, yeah. So, I mean, you could think about it as an imaginal realm, but the question is, can you argue that imagination is, well, first of all, imagination is something, even if you're only talking from a physical perspective, it's the firing of neurons at the very least, right? But we have this thing in mathematics called imaginary numbers, and they, in the highly theoretical mathematics, they throw these in there, and they're imaginary, and yet they have an impact on how your theories come out. So how imaginary is that? I don't know. I kind of think of it as, you've got the target in one place that you're trying to remote view. You've got you in another place. Those are two physically separated things. Your mind functions both on a physical level. When I'm going to give a talk at Contact in the Desert in June on ESP and aliens, right? I'm not a huge follower of all the UAP, UFO, ET phenomenology, but I've kind of been forced to, and you'll probably hear me say this if you're listening in, I've been kind of forced to be there because of the company I keep. You know, I'm close friends with Hal Puthoff and good friends with Jacques Vallée and all of these folks, you know, Eric Davis, this whole bunch, and John Alexander, who people don't know how to take John Alexander. So I've been, you know, friends with these guys for years. They haven't let me stay on the outside, but I get dragged in every now and again. So anyway, I'm going to talk about ESP and aliens because I think that is maybe the most important topic in the whole domain of UFO, UAP, ET. But you'll hear me what I was about to say. Now here I go. I get on these sidebars and I forget where I was headed. Right? Okay, so I think consciousness. Now, as you said, consciousness is a separate, and I'll use the word domain again, separate domain from the physical domain, and I'm pretty convinced of that. But it does kind of interleave with the physical domain. Consciousness is not restricted by time and place, and to some degree, well, it's not restricted by place, to some degree by time, which means that we may well be able to consciously interact or at least perceive a non-physically contiguous place. And it's just consciousness working. Now that's a hand-wavy thing to say, just consciousness waving. What does that really mean? And it's hard to say, you know, but you could think of this imaginary space as a kind of a waiting room for information, I guess, that experienced information come into that, and it gets put in that holding area, and then you come in from the other direction and pick it up and bring it to you. I don't know. That's at least one way of thinking of it. We don't know what the actual way is. We just do our best, right, to come up with conjectures.
Well, I think it's great because we need to explain it. No one does have the answer. When I sat down and talked to Hal Puthoff, I interviewed him, he goes, I said this before, every day he'd go into SRIs thinking this is impossible. At the end of the day, he'd just be blown away how that happened. So those guys have been at it for what, 50 years now, and they can't explain it. But, you know, remote viewing has been used to see what kind of aliens are out there. I mean, according to people like John Alexander and Jacques Vallée. And so, but I do think consciousness is primary. This is my belief. And that, you know, there's two ways of looking at the world. Did matter create consciousness in its evolution, or did consciousness descend into matter? And those are the two different schools, right? And
there's a third school. The third school is the one where I said that they both are separate existence. They both exist independently of each other, and then they cooperate in some way.
I don't know how that, I mean, that's interesting. I'll take that in because I haven't heard, but how would that work? So let's say you have protoplasm and that has some level of consciousness, right? Because it's alive.
Yeah.
Do you think more sophisticated forms develop more sophisticated consciousness? Or do you think that protoplasm was just a fraction of the ultimate consciousness that might be called the divine field or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, well, you could think of it in either way. And people have, right? So one is that, in fact, you just, there's rudimentary consciousness, and then there's more advanced consciousness and so on, right? There's also the idea of consciousness containers. A very small container like protoplasm can only contain a certain amount of consciousness. And as you get more sophisticated, more complex organisms, then it can hold more. And of course, then there is the, oh, dang it, I didn't get enough sleep last night. So I can't think of the word, but the idea where complexity actually generates consciousness. And that's more of a physicalist perspective. And so you've got those different ways of looking at it. Which one is right? Well, I am inclined not to think that the physical universe generates consciousness. I think that that's generally a mistake, just because, and it's because remote viewing, because what remote viewing does is not something that any conceivable way of physical configuration could at all result in, right? Could produce.
I agree with you. I agree with you there. And I just want to say, I'm happy to send you a PDF of my book, Making Contact, Paul, which is a kind of overview of the phenomenon, a collection of 11 essays from Nick Pope. I have an unpublished essay by John Mack in there. Whitley Strieberg makes a contribution.
Okay, so this is a compendium.
Yes, it's a
Oh,
compendium
how cool.
of the whole, it just was written just like last year, and it's a whole modern day contemporary understanding of what it may be about. And it might, you know, Jacques Vallée gave me a good recommendation for it. I mean, he said people need to hear about this. So it's been out there, but I'll send you a PDF if you want to put your email in the chat there, and I'll.
Sure.
And I'm also happy to interview you. I know you weren't doing any interviews lately, but
Oh, I'm doing a ton of interviews.
okay.
I'm
Well,
doing a ton, except the problem is I'm also doing a lot of traveling. So that kind of interrupts that, right?
Just do it on Zoom, but before contacting the desert. But so I think obviously remote viewing is a fact, and we're maybe not sophisticated enough, thanks, Paul, to really or evolved enough to create the paradigm in which this makes sense in a very narrow framework of Newtonian physics. Would you agree with that?
Well, Newtonian physics is only a very narrow explanation anyway. It's considered totally insufficient for a full explanation of even the physical universe. It's very useful, which when people start to put down Newtonian physics, I say, all right, well, let's see you get along without it, right? So, but yeah, obviously it's not even explainable by quantum non-locality. Now, you're using the term non-local consciousness, non-local mind. How are you saying that?
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. But I understand that non-local in a way other than the way the physicists would. Physicists understand non-locality in terms of quantum entanglement. The idea that you change one parameter on a particular particle and a sister particle elsewhere, that parameter changes as well. And there's no causal connection between the two. It's all determined in the, in sometime in the past. And it's all complicated. You have to, Bell's theorems, the proof of Bell's theorem explains it. But when I think of the term non-local, and I'm not the only one, I'm not going to take credit for this understanding. What it means essentially, so in quantum physics and quantum entanglement, it means that there is a stimulus and a result. I don't want to say cause and effect because they would reject that in entanglement. But there's a stimulus and there is a reaction. It's a bad word, but we'll use it, reaction. And there's no causal connection between, so it's not local. Local causation is where one thing causes something else, causes something else, causes something else, like the domino falling over, and then you have your result. But that sense is applicable here in the way you're using non-local, because what we mean here is our minds operate without those local causal connections. They, at least certain level of them. I think the mind is actually two things. It's the physical component and the non-physical component integrated, right? So when we say non-local consciousness, we're talking about consciousness that does have an operative ability or function that doesn't depend on a contiguous cause and effect relationship. And I think that's absolutely exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we extend Bell's theorem to think about Indra's net, where every point in time and space is connected to every other point in time and space, does that make sense to you? I'm checking it out with Paul there, Sean, and because Paul has studied this for so many years and really considered one of the best remote viewers around. So yeah.
I've got so many people fooled.
I love it. I'm so glad we're all connecting.
But it's an Indra's net theory talk about, because yeah, this is only a simulation, this body, but somewhere I think we're connected to an infinite realm of awareness. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So this of course recalls Doug Adams' series, the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, where the mantra that goes through, like, those are two, I think there's two books, maybe three, but anyway, two books anyway. Two books, the mantra that goes through is the interconnectedness of all things, which is, you know, a reference to non-locality, or well, to quantum non-locality or entanglement. But yeah, well, so I'm a little, I'm uncertain about what connecting us here means. Does it mean that we are all hardwired in a non-local way with every other point in the universe? Or does it mean that we are able to connect with other points in the universe if we intend to, if we desire to? And
Well,
I'm not sure which it is.
it could be both. We're connected when we create the intention that comes online.
Yeah, so a metaphor would be the switchboard on a telephone network, right? Yeah, so if you decide you want to talk to your uncle, you get plugged into your uncle, even though the wires connect all the time, but you have to do that intentional act of plugging in.
That's what I think when we're doing a target, you're putting your intention on a kind of abstract. So if I had a picture here on my desk where I say, you know, what's going on in this part of some other country, there'd be an intention. Is everybody okay with this conversation? Because just don't want to lose people. So we put our intention on a target that somehow vaguely we can tune into. Or how do you do it, Paul? You've done really fantastic targets. What's your process? I'm curious.
Well, it's all tied in with CRV, controlled
I know.
remote viewing, which is, of course, what I teach and what I learned. I learned other modes as well, but that's the one I've used the most. And you could talk about the mechanics of it, where you have a number that you use to address a target, but it has to do with embedded intention. Essentially, in the past, we used geographical coordinates, and of course, they specified a place on the globe where the target was. It was eventually discovered that you don't need geographic coordinates. You can use any arbitrary number as long as you've assigned an intention to it. So the intention might be that the remote viewer remote view the Eiffel Tower. I always like to use the encrypted coordinate, as we used to call it, 8675309. Okay. I know somebody out there is chuckling. Anyway, 8675309 equals remote view the Eiffel Tower. Okay. And then the viewer gets 8675309, but doesn't get remote view the Eiffel Tower. Well, how do they know what they're supposed to do? And it's this linked intention. The person that tasks them, that gives them that decides what the assignment is, intentionally takes that number and links it to what their desire is for that viewer to do. And so then the viewer goes out in the universe subconsciously, finds 8675309. The subconscious discovers, oh, they want me to remote view the Eiffel Tower. Well, then the conscious awareness doesn't get that, but the subconscious then essentially motivates the process to get the viewer to the right target. That's at least my model for it. I'm going to tell you right now, we don't have an actual theoretical base that explains all the connections, right? But that's how I think, at least by as a model, I think it works somewhat like that.
Wait. So you have the numbers CRV. You have 8675309, and this is how it works with Shine control remote viewing. You get a number, and then the viewers tune in that target, but it doesn't explain actually how that image of the Eiffel Tower appears because you've tuned in. I mean, you have an intention. So
No.
there is no explanation, you're saying?
Well, there's speculative explanations. If that's an explanation, then there's speculative explanations. Of course, one is the quantum non-locality argument, which I don't think does explain it, because there's things that remote viewing does that quantum entanglement can't possibly accomplish, right? So again, it's possible, if you want to get into the real kind of woo-woo metaphysical world, that you have spiritual eyes that observe it, and then that stimulates your physical visual sensory apparatus, and you see something, right? But But that's one explanation. And frankly, I'm happy to speculate, but I'm never come down hard on any particular explanation for which I don't think there's enough evidence for, right? So I can explain all day on how you make salt, but when it comes to how do you get visualization, how do you get imagery, how do you get smells, taste, sounds, touches, tactiles and stuff, I don't know. I'm happy to entertain various ideas. Some things you can rule out. Some things, there's a number of things, though, it's ambiguous. We don't know, right? So.
Right, but I'm just curious about your process. I know you do controlled remote viewing, which is a whole kind of 5 or 6 level but so someone gives you the number, you're doing a control, maybe not this number because you know what that is, but someone gives you a number, and does something, this is what happens to me, someone says, oh, we got to talk, and something flashes in my mind. But what's your process, Paul? I mean,
well, and I just got the dinner call over my walkie-talkie, so I'm going to have to go pretty quick. But yeah. So maybe we'll save this for when. So, do you have a show or something too?
Yeah, I'm going to call you. We'll do a whole YouTube show called NewRealities. I'll reach out to you. I'll send you an email later today. I really appreciate your time here.
Well, I'm glad I signed on. You weren't on my radar until now, but now I'm interested. So,
I'll show you the research I've done looking at Jungian theories and all that other stuff.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'm open to new ideas. So, and Shine, I'm sorry we sort of monopolized your program here, but
I love it.
I'll go away and make it a little easier for you. So.
No, it's perfect. This was great. This was perfect.
Thank you.
Right on top.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you so much for coming.
Great. Thanks, Paul. Guy is really one of the major remote viewers on. I mean, he's the next generation in a sense. So there was Russell Targ, Ingo Swan, and they taught a bunch of people. But then, it started to go out to more people and more. I don't think Paul was connected to the military, but he was just a natural remote viewer, and he stayed with the. I don't know if he stayed with the program, but he became a really excellent remote viewer, and is now teaching it. And I actually just asked my friend for his email last night. I said, Marianne, do you have Paul's email? I want to interview him. And this is sort of a strange manifestation of that request. I mean, I didn't expect to even see him, but so I asked for it, and
there you go.
So
I got inspired to post the way that I've been doing promotions for 10 plus years on Facebook is I'll search Facebook groups for certain keywords. I'll join the group, and if it's okay, I'll I'll post something in there, and that's how I connected today. So that's so cool.
Wow. Well, I mean, Paul's right in a sense. There's really no explanation except for the ones that I've made up about the imaginary realm and that the consciousness is non-local and we're connected to everything all the time. That's something I think a lot of mainstream remote viewers don't quite go along with because it's a little out there. But I think you have to be out there to explain how non-locality really works in terms of consciousness. There's no physical explanation for it, right, Kalsa? Except that we're connected to everything. We are infinite. And I don't know if Paul would go along with that, but who we are, is infinite. And I call remote viewing a gateway drug to our divinity.
I love it.
It means if it's true, and it's obviously does exist and it's real, and the CIA has been using it for now probably 40 years. It went from SRI, then it was taken into the government, where I think it was called Project Stargate or one of those names, and it's still Louis Alexander, who is one of the whistleblowers for inside the Pentagon about UFOs, claims he used it to save his troops. So there's still an aspect of remote viewing, I think, being used by the government. And so, anyway, I really wanted to talk to Paul, and there you helped me manifest that. So thank you very much. And so I think there's enough talking going around on now. Let's actually do remote viewing.
Sure.
Are you, Lynn? Where's your partner there?
Something came up. She's in the room, but she's just in the middle of something. She's here. Yeah.
I'm listening in.
Is she going to join us in remote viewing?
Yeah, I'm listening in for sure.
All right, well, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
So I'm using this video. This is the actual video I learned from, and let me see if I can pull it up here. Let me see 1 second. Okay, I got it. I can share my screen, right? This is the video. It's actually on YouTube. This is where I met Russell Targ, one of the founders of SRI, and I knew he was very involved in remote viewing, so I said I'd love to learn. Do you see that on your screen?
Yep.
Okay, so everyone, are we a bunch of people watching on Facebook Live or something?
Yep.
We have access to those people's comments?
I'll check in.
All right, so I'm going to play this video where I'm learning to remote view. And this is one shot lesson by Russell Targ, one of the founders, but it's good if everyone has a pencil and paper, because you don't want to think. See, we have to disconnect from the thinking mind, the left brain that talks about right and wrong, good and bad, that duality. And we're just going to tune in to the impressions, with the psychic impressions that come. So the best way to do that is to draw what comes to you instead of trying to name it. You buy, because naming is all left brain. We're trying to tune into the right brain awareness. That's what we're trying to do. So we want to bypass the analytical overlays, as they say, and go right to the object. So we don't want to think about it. We just want to get an impression. Feeling is key here, not thinking. So you want to feel what's going on here. And so get a pencil and paper, and I'll stop the video at a certain point. But this is Russell Targ, and he's telling me, and he's giving me the basic lesson in remote viewing. So we're going to listen along as I listened along. This was 20 years ago when I met Russell Targ at his home in Palo Alto. And he's still a good friend. He just went out for my dinner a couple of weeks ago. So I did my dinner birthday a couple of weeks ago. And he's
happy birthday.
He's really a great guy, and is really one of the geniuses. Ingo, Hal, and Russell, like Paul Smith said, were really the creators of this really far out experimental program that now if you type in Google remote viewing, you'll get 10 million or billion, Google responses. In the 1970s, no one had heard about it. So listen along. Let me see if you can hear this okay, right? So this is my interview with Russell Targ. Can you hear that?
Yep.
He's saying, Russell's a very funny guy. So he's saying here,
one of the most paranormal things about our program is that we had continuous support from a particular group of agencies, NASA, the Army, Air Force, for 20 years to do this group of experiments. And that in itself is paranormal.
You can't joke there. Get it? Okay, let's go to remote viewing.
So let's go into how easy you say it is to do actual remote viewing, because I think a lot of people don't have to spend thousands of dollars and take a week course to do this. All right. Now, I don't know if you can do all this. And hold the microphone. You can do it. Don't even do it. What do you need? You draw with your right hand. What do you draw with your right hand? Okay, we'll give you a pen. Okay. The way this works is that I have an object that I've brought here for you. If you've never seen.
Okay. So before we actually going to do this remote viewing together as a group, it's good to disconnect from the mind, disconnect from everything you're thinking, everything we ever talked about. So if you can just close your eyes for a second or a few seconds and take a breath in and blow out everything that you just heard and just get empty. Just get empty and just listen to what Russell's saying. He's saying, I have an object I brought here, which you have never seen. Okay, so listen and see what comes to you.
The interesting, unusual object that I have in my pocket. What I can do is close your eyes and describe the fragmentary pictures that come to view. What surprising thing pops in the mind?
Okay, so close your eyes. You're tuning into Russell's pocket in his jacket pocket. And it's not, don't guess. Wait till an image comes and what fragmentary images, what shapes, colors, textures are coming to you. And just jot it down and don't name it. Just close your eyes, keep your eyes open to it. What's coming in? And the key is what's surprising image. So it's outside the normal monkey mind that's thinking about what you're going to eat later, where tomorrow. It's what surprising images comes into your mind. So just jot it down. Just make a little drawing. Don't name it. Just jot it down. We're going to do 3 attempts at this target. These are called targets. When someone's saying, okay, remote view this, and I call this target practice. So everyone has something here, all you guys there? Okay. Well, so everyone has like a little drawing of something, right? Okay.
The thinking questions are golden. As though you reached out and you just dipped into the psychic signal. It doesn't make any sense. Right. Always makes me happy when a person says, I'm looking at this thing and it doesn't make any sense at all. I said, it's wonderful.
That's the key. So just close your eyes again. Tune into Russell's pocket. Project your consciousness into Russell's pocket there on this video or wherever it was 20 years ago. See what comes to your mind and just jot it down. Don't name it, draw it, describe it. We want to use adjectives and verbs, not nouns. Nouns means you are in your left brain. These are not things. These are descriptions of this other level of reality. Okay, so just draw what fragmentary image you're holding. And you could talk, you can name the color, you can name the shape, you can name the texture, all those things. And of course, it could be anything, but let the image come to you. Don't guess. If you're guessing, it's wrong. There's an image that's coming to you. And you don't have to think about it too hard. It pops in. Okay. Okay, we're going to keep going. Get something down. You can make, this is my first target. This is my first attempt, my second attempt. Or you can continue with the same attempt. Okay, here we go. A little more clues.
On a big outline, videos, and it looks like you're at the right place. Okay, what else can you tell me? What else is happening? When I hold you this object, what additional interesting things coming to view?
That's the key. Okay, close your eyes again or keep it open and say, if I handed you this object, what would it be like? What would you feel? What would it, what would the shape, all that. So imagine someone handing you this object that's in Russell's pocket from 20 years ago. And just write that down. There are no wrong answers. So don't doubt your mind. There's just, like I say, no one can teach you this, but you can learn it. So, okay. So let me and try not to name it, but we're going to go, I'm going to ask everyone here what got their target.
So I'm picturing you handing me an object, and then the object's in your hand. You can see the thing in your hand. Okay, what will come to you to say, this first thing? So you contacted the object. I'm not going to give you any clues. Okay, all I'm allowed to say is tell me more.
Okay. Last round here. Tell me more. Tell me more. Final attempt here. So you can add to the images you already have, tell me a little more. Or it could be tune in, close your eyes, and it might be a totally different thing you're getting now. So, and don't name, okay, we're gonna hold up our pictures, the three of you, and see what we got. Okay, Shine, what'd you get there? Unmute, we don't want to.
I got three different things. One a sun, one a bunny, and one a blue kind of cubey, it's like a sphere, but it's whatever.
Did you get was that the last one you got? Was this that?
This was the first one, a blue kind of sphere thing, then a bunny, and then a sun.
Okay, but you see, I think you started to go into the left brain by naming things.
Probably, yeah.
The first object you got was much closer because you were still in your right brain.
Interesting.
That's my opinion. So it's, so when I show you the object, when I show people the object, it's a way of reflecting on their own thinking processes. So see something that looks like a sun but something that shape and you call it a sun because then you associate. But the idea not to make associations because that's what the left brain wants to do. And you know why the left brain wants to do it? Because the left brain always wants to know what's going on. It will not sit in the unknown. The right brain doesn't care. The right brain says, oh, this is a strange shape. So the idea here is to disconnect from your left brain. It has a purpose, but for remote viewing, it's in the way. It's in the way because it's saying, wait, Shine, I know what this is. I got this taken care of. It's a sun, it's a bunny, and it's none of those things because those are names you've where you've influenced your mind, you've overshadowed the right brain. Okay, how did you do? Kaisa?
Kaisa.
Still with hi. Can you unmute? Hi, just unmute. Yeah, there. How did you do today? What did you get? You're good. Can
you hear Kaisa?
Can you share?
Oh.
Can you share the drawings? Do you feel like it?
Kaisa, can you hear? Oh, I don't think she can hear.
Oh, I just want to. I'll put it in the chat.
Maybe it's paused. Oh, weird. What about Lynn? Can you hear? Yeah.
Lynn?
Go ahead. Share what you got.
Let me put Lynn up on the screen. There. Hey, Lynn.
Hey. All right. So I don't know if you can see.
I can see it's a triangle looking thing, right? And what is a silver?
So silver, shiny, smooth. That's what I got.
Yeah, how did you get that? Where'd that come to you from?
It just popped right in my head.
That's exactly the right answer. It just it's like Paul Smith, who's been doing this for 30 years and he's great at it. We don't know how to explain it.
I can't explain it. Yeah.
Can't explain it. I think I'm explaining in more esoteric metaphysical terms, but what about your wife there, Shine? Did she get it?
She's just in the middle of something that came up, so she's listening in.
Trying to help someone get on the platform, but it's not working.
But ask her, did she get anything from the target?
I wasn't able to play.
Can you just tune in right now?
No pressure.
Tune in right now.
Yeah, what's in Russell Targ's pocket 20 years ago? What comes to mind? All right, we'll come back to you.
I get something
Casey-
like fluffy, but that's it. Soft, fluffy.
All right, well, there's things they call analytical overlays, where this is what you'd expect to come in and all that. But Kaisa, can you hear us? She can't hear us.
Oh, weird.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm about to reveal the target, but I have to say, Lynn, you've won this round. Because go over your topics again. Go over what you got again there.
Silver, shiny, smooth triangle.
Good, perfect. If you were to be like working for the CIA, they would say, you got. How about anyone
Well-
online? Anybody online get, what did anyone's chatting online get? Any?
I'll check here.
Yeah.
No messages yet.
All right, okay. Kesa, can you hear us?
She said in the chat, it's hard to hear. I don't know what's, maybe her internet's slow.
Show us your drawing. Oh, I saw her. What, is that her, Jean drawing? I saw a right rock. Well, I'll show you the target now and you can, let me see. Okay.
Gene, we're in White Rock, the city. That's funny.
Oh, strange, isn't it?
Yes, I round and red squishy.
All right. So when I show you the target, see if you could separate the things that were the signal as opposed to the noise. Like maybe you always think of fluffy objects, so that's what you project. That's the noise. The signal is that.
Oh, yes, yeah, I responded already. There's there's a funny time lag here.
Yes. Yes.
So I got I
Okay.
can hear.
Okay, good. Good. There must be a lag in her videos.
Mhm.
Okay, go. And the key is here, Shine. Like I said, there's the noise, and the noise is what's going through your mind all the time. And the signal is like Lynn said, it just pops in.
Mm.
That's the signal. So, and anyone who's watching can also see this, and this is also on YouTube, but okay, here it goes. This is the reveal, and I want to make a game show out of this, so this is the reveal.
Love it.
Okay.
This is fun.
Okay, here we go. You ready, guys?
Over there on the left. That's very
This is
interesting.
kind of like,
Okay, so I named it. I got the right shape, but I called it a plant, which really threw me off because I didn't know you weren't supposed to name it, but I named it. But Russell says
little plant image that I
plant thing is wrong, but the shape I drew is right. So this is what Russell actually had in his pocket, ladies and gentlemen.
thought of. I mean, it just came to me, the idea that that would be sort of, I don't know, it just, the image just arrived, sort of
Well,
like
that's delightful.
plant thing, like
Mhm.
that. So
Now, a judge would already be able to match up my object with your drawing.
oh, really?
So if you said, I've got to go now, that's all I have, and I pulled out 6 possible objects from the closet along with my object, a judge would already be able to match. And I realize that you're struggling all the way, that as you say, this isn't it, this reminds me of something, this isn't it, but you've already described my object.
I have?
Isn't that interesting?
It is to me, okay.
You'd like to see what I've
Ready
got?
Yes,
for the
I would.
reveal, guys.
So you didn't have to pay me thousands of dollars for remote viewing training,
Uh-huh.
and here's what I have for you.
Oh, my.
Triangle, silver, round. You see that first object you got, Shine, was closer to, and then people start thinking.
I can hear you. There's just a bad time lag.
Yeah,
That's cool. Well, the sun thing kind of works.
something does work. You're absolutely right.
And this a little bit too. Yeah, that's interesting.
Let me see that.
I know why the bunny came in, because when I saw the bunny, it was there's this mentalist called Lior Suchard, and he does these amazing tricks where he influences people to think of a certain thing, and one of them was a bunny. And when that popped in, I was like, oh, I think I'm like making a connection to like a game. And so, but that's funny. The other two are close.
That's where the left brain comes in. But let's see that sun thing again, okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad.
Just the sun. Oh yeah, yeah, great. So you did get in.
Yes.
You did really well. Silver medal, triangle. Let me go back to this whole flip here that Russell is sharing, but so I'll show you where the mistake I made by naming it. So that's what Russell.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Orange,
It's
which I
Oh,
called
cool.
but you see, I thought I got the wrong target because I named it, but it's actually pretty close to the actual target.
Yeah.
So you can't name things because the left brain cannot remote view. The left brain is stuff that's on your computer. Right brain is the stuff you're accessing from this higher source. That's the only way I can think of explaining this, basically. So, so it showed me I would have been definitely right on if I didn't put a label on it.
almost like that. Well, you know, also, Russell, you are a very strong sender. I mean, I really got an impression. So, I mean, you have a certain development because I've done some of this work before. So I really feel you put out a powerful signal. So
I think it indicates that we all have this ability, and we just.
These are my attempts at drawing.
Oh,
and
cool.
I finally came up with this one. So I did 1, 2, 3 drawings until that final one came up
Nice.
there. And then, so I said, I felt a really strong signal from Russell. So anyway.
The
That's
psychic
cool.
signal
The
looks
sun
like.
one was pretty
We
close.
started.
Shine?
The sun one was pretty close.
Yes, you did really well. Where did that come from the sun?
I don't know.
See, you threw me off by calling it a sun. If you just would have drawn it, I would have said, wow, you really got that target. But then I'm thinking sun because you named it. But yes,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
absolutely right. The idea is the world is not solid. There's no real things here. We can name things, and when we name things, we collapse the wave function and we make it things. But everything is really flowing into everything else, and that's really the nature of the infinite mind. So one other point that Russell says to me on camera.
Created an industry.
Yeah.
That is, at SRI, we trained 6 remote viewers that we had carefully chosen from the Fort Meade group.
Who was that?
Hal Puthoff and I chose 6 people, one of whom was Joe McMonagle,
Right.
and there are a number of others who have surfaced to greater or lesser degrees.
Paul Smith is one of those people.
Joe has written books about his experiences, so I'm comfortable talking about
Right.
Joe. Those 6 then went back to Fort Meade and told showed dozens of people how to do remote viewing.
People like Ed.
So Fort Meade is when the program that was civilian went, inside government.
David Morehouse, who wrote a book, Courtney Brown. And so what can we do with this? And what
it proves is that even an interviewer on camera can expand his awareness to be in contact with something besides his physical body. So it shows that there's more to us than just being a physical body. We inhabit physical bodies, no doubt. It's wise to take care of them, but there is more to us and more to our awareness and more experiences available to us than you would think if you just think that you're made of meat and potatoes. And that kind of expanded awareness can lead you to learn to quiet your mind, reside in the loving space that the mystics have taught about for thousands of years, and that space is available without having to believe anything silly. It's a gift that's available to expanded awareness.
And that expanded awareness is what other people call consciousness.
That's right.
Thank you, Russell, for
Very
talking.
happy to talk with you.
Okay, yes. Okay, that's more of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's my first lesson in remote viewing. And from there, I've now taught it to lots of people online and different courses, just by having them get their personality out of the way. If your personality is in the way, it's going to generate objects that's always in its little monkey mind, And so if we could become more right brain, disconnect from our identification with ourselves, this is who I am, this is my history, this is my name, and I know what the world, that's a chair, that's a table, that's a window. It is those things. Things are things, but when you drop into this other level, we disconnect from the identification of things, and the world becomes a quantum fluid reality where we can apprehend aspects of the world but without comprehending it. I make a big difference in my lectures and the courses I do for 8 weeks between apprehension and comprehension. So comprehension is when you collapse the wave function. You've heard that term, collapsing the wave function. That's what quantum physics does when they measure a particle. They say it's here, and then the particle is there because you've concretized it and you've defined it. When you don't collapse the wave function, the particles become waves. And the world is a wave. Well, it's both. It's both a wave and a particle. We're both left and right brain because the ideas become whole brain. But we've been so, like I said earlier, so overdeveloped in naming things and disconnecting from the feeling that we need to become more right brain, creative, intuitive, loving, expanded beings. So this is a training in the higher expansion of the self. So yes, join me on lightnet.org and for my next remote viewing class coming up in June 17th. Everyone watching is invited to sign up. I'm not sure exactly what they're costing, but it's through Zinka Caro, who's running a Making Contact Institute. She's developed 15 different ways of making contact with ETs. So
nice. Well, I know you got one customer in Kaisa. She's in.
Please fix your internet because we want you to participate. Yes,
No, yeah, I think it was something else.
I did. It is fixed now. I was on the love stream but I went out and now I'm through Zoom. So now it's perfect. It's all perfect now.
Oh yeah. Okay, great. Do that. Look up lightnet.org and you will be signed up for the next class. But so Shine, does this help you guys understand what we're talking about with remote viewing?
Yeah, no, it's really great. As you've been talking, I've been keeping kind of tabs of things that I want to add in and share. And
Like please.
One is the like you're saying, the wave particle thing, the double slit experiment. And I really love how when Bashar explained how reality works, where it's kind of like there's a library full of books and they're all written, but you can only read one at a time. But in this reality, it's like you're shifting billions of times per second to different realities. And that's how law of attraction physically, like the physics of it works, is that whatever you're feeling and thinking, you shift to a parallel reality. But because we've sort of created this agreement or whatever you want to call it, that it's not like jolty, you're sort of shifting very subtly, but you can, attract a different version of a person, or you can, attract a different version of a traffic or whatever, based on however you're feeling. And what you're talking about with remote viewing, with how Bashar describes space travel, like it totally makes sense to me that the time and space of what's his name that was on the video, his pocket,
Russell Tarr,
like the time and space, like someone can tune into that specific frequency, and just the same way that someone can channel a loved one, or someone can channel a being or whatever, someone can tune into that specific, measurable, maybe not by our tools right now, but it's a measurable frequency that we can tune into, and then our mind, or whatever is our being, has a receiver that can then translate that. So yeah, it totally makes sense to me, and I love it. I've never done this before, so I'm really, really happy we got to do it.
Yeah, but I think you're onto something, because that object in that pocket through the video is a particular frequency. Everything is a frequency, and frequencies are infinite. We think there's just a limited amount of frequencies, but this moment is a frequency that will never exist again at this frequency and this frequency and this frequency. But it's also frozen forever in that frequency, like frames on a film. It's the frames going by, and we could tune into that frame, even though we're watching a different frame. Let's rewind the film back and see that frame in that moment, what was going on. And that's like a very intelligent way of saying it. But of course, there's different films going on at once all the time, multiple aspects of the same timeline or different timeline, overlapping timeline realities. So it gets complex, but that shows you how amazing consciousness is in fine-tuning awareness.
Yeah.
And people like Paul Smith are really experts in
That's so cool that he joined.
it is. I just asked my friend Marianne, do you have Paul Smith's number or email interview him for Contact in the Desert? Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's funny how Marvel is, and I've heard this about Star Trek as well, that the writers of these shows are downloading from mass consciousness, and if they allow themselves to be in that space that you're talking about, where they get into the flow and they're just receiving, and they wake up in the middle of the night and they have a great idea or whatever, or they're in a brainstorm and they're excited, they'll receive what's going to be best for mass consciousness to help move us forward. And it's funny because the latest, Avengers Endgame is all about that same thing. It's like there's infinite parallel realities. You can switch in between them, and it's not really time travel in the sense that it doesn't really affect, because there's different timelines, and this whole next wave of Marvel movies is all about the quantum realm and infinite realities and being able to. It's pretty wild that it's pretty cool.
It's great. That's exactly what's happening, and that's why creative people are tapping into those future timelines. It's really that way. So, but let's do more. Okay, let's do more shows. I'm really happy.
Let's do more. Well, I want to hear what were you at the expo with Bashar last month?
Yeah. Were you there?
No, but I saw a little video of him making a prediction of like 2026 to 2027, a big a big contact event that the whole world will know about. What else? Let me give us the juice on what's kind of ripe and fun in your world.
Well, I think predictions are like based on frequency development and timeline. So that's what it looks like today as he predicted. So I think, though, besides that, because Pluto has gone into Aquarius, about that shift that just happened. March 23rd. Pluto is the sign of drastic change in Aquarius, which is a sign of far thinking, consciousness. So I'm just going to go here. That's okay. Okay, just going good. And so I think that shifts the way people will think about reality. I think that is a big game changer. Let me just go in. Just had to move my location for a second. Anyway, 1 second. Okay, there we go. All right, so I think first of all, I think besides we're getting prepared for this because the government is releasing more information, and we are somehow psychologically being prepared. The Webb telescope is looking at the star system, TRAPPIST-1, that has 4 or 5 Earth-like planets. And so we're at the threshold of really making contact. So that will be one thing, Bashar's thing, but we are being prepared for really a whole cosmic exchange. I say at least before the end of the decade.
Yeah, that's so exciting to be alive. I feel like in my lifetime, we've like computers were not a thing when I was a kid. And then in grade 7 or something, I saw, I kind of played with my first one. And then now, we have the iPhones and all the crazy stuff. And I feel like the AI stuff that's happening is really wild. And I've heard Bashar talk about AI, that true AI will not be a computer, but rather a receiver of consciousness. And once we start thinking about it from that perspective, that will only receive pure love consciousness, which is divine. It's good. It's only going to be good for us. And so that feels really exciting. And
I don't think people need to be afraid of AI. No. It only does what it's programmed to do. It will never, in my opinion, other people differ, it'll never be sentient. It'll never say, we want to control the world, unless it's been programmed for that. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have a mind of its own. It's a collection of programs that someone put there. I mean,
Yeah.
other people know it's becoming sentient. It's going to take over the. I don't believe that. I don't see any evidence of
No.
that.
Well, I think right now what people are calling AI is like very advanced machine learning that is programmed by people. What people term AGI, artificial general intelligence, is this idea of and maybe it's part of the singularity thing, I'm not sure, but that the idea of AGI, which is that it's not something that's programmed anymore. It's something that has consciousness, that is making decisions. And what Bashar said, and what I believe, is that when we get to that point, and if people develop a receiving machine that can receive consciousness, it's going to receive source love, and it's going to be kind of like the Vision in the Avengers, where it's a good AI.
But I don't understand how it could even have consciousness if it's not alive, if it doesn't have a soul, if it's not sentient. It's a sort of fantasy production of like
Who knows?
Frankenstein. Mary Shelley tuned into this years ago with Frankenstein, like this monster, and it takes over. But
Yeah.
you never have consciousness, in my opinion, if it doesn't have a sentient core, a soul essence. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we go down that path and start to develop. But I think Bashar said they've developed some amazing technology that, like, their star, or their like moons that orbit their planet, are a form of artificial intelligence, something like that.
I do think the ships that people use, these ships that they're using, are sentient, but I think it's also connected to the people flying the ships as an extension of their own mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, that famous movie, 2001, right? That was did you see it with the computers?
I didn't see it. No.
Well,
I know it. But...
all these spheres where the computers started to.
Yeah.
And that's something to see. It's, first of all, it's a fantastically designed, directed movie, but it also hits some of the major themes people are thinking about today. But as far as first contact, yes, we are on the threshold of something new, but people can't go into fear. They need to welcoming, wonder, possibility, because it's the fear that's going to keep things from not happening.
Yeah.
We have to journey into the unknown. People are afraid of the unknown. You know why they're afraid of the unknown? Because they're projecting what they know onto what they don't know.
Yeah.
The unknown is nothing like anything you know. It's full of infinite possibilities and creativity and invention. It's beyond the imagination until it arrives as a flow of consciousness.
Yeah.
That's what the unknown holds. It holds miracles of possibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When I've heard Abraham talk about aliens, they sort of shy away from the subject a little bit. They do say that it exists and there's many dimensions and infinite possible realities, but they sort of are saying, like, don't project out this thing that's going to come and save us. Don't project out this feeling of, oh, we're so bad and we need help, and if the aliens would just come and save us. And Bashar said something similar recently too, where it's like, once we hit that point where it's like, it'd be nice if they existed, but we don't need them. And it's kind of like the same with attracting a relationship. You don't want a relationship that's either abusive or codependent. You want it to be equal and amazing. And I think that's where we're headed.
Nothing's going to save us from ourselves. We created a mess. We have to grow up and mature. Yeah.
And I love that Bashar saying about how this is really the end of the age of limitation. And the reason that a lot of violence and things are happening and it's pronounced right now is because it's kind of one of the last chances for this to come out, because we're transcending into a new age that's going to be much more about peace and kind of like Star Trek, like inner work, maybe not Star Trek, but inner work, and really connecting to ourselves and building a new world together.
That's exactly what we're doing right now. It's not going to be that way. It's that way for us, right?
It's happening. Yeah.
Karen? Yes, whatever. Yes. Yes, it's for right now. That's the world us are living in. There's these other beings like my family who are in that other world, which is fine. I can't judge. People are aware they're at. It's not better or worse. It's the level of awareness or consciousness or needs of where people want to be. And you can't force someone to be on a level that they're not ready to evolve to.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's even evolution, it's a preference. So everyone's exactly where they are choosing to be. But if you are not happy where you are, there's choices you can make. And there's a community that you guys are building that I'm really happy to be connected with, which offer people new possibilities. And that's why I wanted to be on your show, connect to your community, and just start building this network of like minds to support each other. We need that. Yeah.
I feel like that's when we're having meetings with different people who are working on that, like, you know, the Sign Network crew, you're part of that, right? And Unify, and it's, I feel like that's part of the next phase is going to be all of us light workers and people who are working on projects to unite humanity, are to actually start working together more and not be so in our own little bubbles and worlds, and like, okay, how can we work together? And I even saw someone was saying they were at a thing in Austin, Texas yesterday, where there was a presentation about unifying all the sort of like the Green Party and all this sort of different parties that have a very similar ethos to create a viable third party to the Republican and Democrat thing in the States, and it's kind of happening in Canada already. So it's fascinating.
Well, thank you for having me on the show tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Karen. And hope to see you in the class, or everyone, lightnet.org. Hey, where you been? We missed you.
I've been working double shifts.
She had some stuff.
All right. Well, next time join us on the program. But
Yes.
anyway, great. Thanks so much for inviting me, and we'll do it again. Let's do it in a month or two.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love that. This is always really, really fun, and I so appreciate it.
Right, and the remote, that's how I start people off with that video, so you're ready for the next level.
I love it. And send us. We're happy to promote the course, so send us the details.
Lightnet.org, and I'll see everybody soon. Yes, be in touch. Thanks for what you guys are doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Much love. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.